Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. This is Fabrizio Aiello, and we are going to do a semi-regular, whenever we get a chance, show. We're going to call it Postentious, because in a world where everything is pretentious, we are beyond pretentious. We are post-tentious. So there you go. With the subject of this, we're going to take weird, obscure, pretentious comics and talk about them. So how you doing, Fabrizio?
Good. I like that you thought of me whenever you thought of doing a show about being pretentious.
Well, you and I were talking about it once. That I said I was pretentious. You said I'm pretentious, and then we kind of, if you remember, we went up to each other for a little bit. So I was just like, and then I sent you a message a couple months ago. I said we should do a show called Postentious. So then I forgot about it because my memory is shit these days. And then Jason Sandberg and Per Berg Narwhal and I did we talked about Mr. X, and he said maybe like once a month. But I was like, I want to talk about less known comics. So yeah. So there you go.
Like something like this is great for me because this was 93. 93, I have access to my local newsstand, and that's it. So this is not showing up at my local newsstand at all.
So yeah. So I might as well. I'll bring up this. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong buttons again because that's what I always do. I'm going to bring up an extra camera, and I'll show this. So we'll do that. There we go. We don't need to see our faces big. So this is Sebastian O. And this is exactly what I was thinking about when I said, let's talk about an obscure, pretentious comic. I mean, do you want to tell people the premise of this? I'm just laughing about how... this is postentious. This is so pretentious. It's beyond, if this was like a music amplifier, this would be in the red,
It really is. I mean, the main character is all of the dreams of a pretentious person, like crammed into one persona. The way they talk, they dress, how they act, like across the board, it's a pretentious person. The world, the funny thing is, I saw the cover, and I mean, I like the artwork. The coloring was a little different for me. I'm like, okay, that definitely adds like a different element to it. But I'm like, is this like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Like I got those vibes at first, but then I'm like, no, this is nothing like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This is just like a bunch of gay guys hanging around, like doing poetry and
So the premise of this is, what if Oscar Wilde was an assassin?
Yeah.
So at the time, I had just moved to Albuquerque. So here I am, like full on. I worked a couple of years, part owner of a pizzeria in New York. So I was a walking stereotype, an Italian from New York who made pizza. I moved to Albuquerque, and I just was like, I'm going to reinvent myself. I was shy. I couldn't talk to girls. So I just remember it was like a 3-day train ride. And I just, this is how pretentious I transformed like a caterpillar into a moth. For 3 days, I was like, I'm going to be reborn. This is like Buddha under the tree for 3 days, Jesus in the tomb, Odin nailed to the tree of wisdom to learn the runes. So when I went to Albuquerque, I'm like, I'm a different person. I was in a cocoon on the train for 3 days. And I started hitting on girls, and I'll never forget, because the last day on the train, I sat down next to a girl, bought her a drink. At night, we were making out. I was just like,
wow.
I literally couldn't talk to girls. And then I was like, who cares? Nobody knows me. I'm in a different state. So when I got there, this came out, and I got a roommate who was an art major. So he's taking photography. And it was funny because when he got drunk, he admitted that he's only a photography major because it's a good way to get girls naked. But when he was sober, he was like, yeah, I love the aesthetics. And like, we were two phony balonies is the only way to describe it. Then this comic came out, and we just thought it was like, we knew it was pretentious, but that's what we liked about it. So Oscar Wilde as an assassin. And here's the funny thing. This is one of the first steampunk things to ever come out.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of surprised me at first. I'm like, oh, like a few, and the thing is, it doesn't hit you over the head with it. It's just like a few things that are kind of steampunk, but outside of that, it's not like in your face. It's not like people walking down the street with get-ups or anything like that.
Right. This was before the whole steampunk aesthetic arose. Like, so they didn't have the goggles. The women don't have any coats and everything. It's like the fashions of the time are like foppish dandies of like British upper crust society, but then they have like infrared sensors and palm sensors, and the house is robotics and things move around. But they don't have laser guns. It's like proto steampunk. So before we bury the lead, this is Grant Morrison. So right away, but this is Grant Morrison before he became Grant Morrison, like superhero art. So this was Grant Morrison of like Sebastian Owen and Animal Man and Doom Patrol. Grant Morrison was my favorite writer at the time. He wrote Doom Patrol, and in Doom Patrol, he used a lot of like beat poetry and like he actually put like a reading list at the back of in the letters page of each comic. And I started picking, one of them was On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and I was an unhappy, lost, shy, nervous comic book kid, and I read Jack On the Road, and I was like, I'm moving across the country. Literally, I read Doom Patrol. Wow. From that, I learned of Jack Kerouac. I read On the Road, and my friends had all moved on. Some of my friends were graduating college already and getting like real jobs, and here I am, in a failing pizzeria. Like literally, a Little Caesars opened up down the block, and we lost 2/3 of our business in 1 week, and we never recovered. So I'm like, my life's plan isn't working. Packed up everything I owned, went across the country, because so I'm very I know Grant Morrison right now is a people that's like hot and cold. Either you love him or hate. I'm very affectionate towards him,
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know that much Grant Morrison. I know some things on and off, and all I know they're like his feud with Alan Moore.
And I love that feud. That's my favorite feud in the history of feuds. Hatfields and McCoys, wrestling feuds, nothing. The Grant Morrison Alan Moore feud is my favorite feud. For those of you who don't know, they both consider themselves wizards. And so Alan Moore is this old-fashioned magic ritual wizard, and Grant Morrison is this new age chaos magic, sex magic wizard, and they curse each other's careers back and forth. Like I just picture Alan Moore just like burning incense with his rings and stuff like that, and his wife just like unwillingly pays attention and does casting incense into a burner and stuff. I destroy your career, and Grant Morrison is just like, yeah, I'm gonna get naked and harness my sexual energies and destroy Alan Moore's career. From the looks of it, Alan Moore's the better wizard. I mean, for sure. How many Grant Morrison movies are there?
Yeah, I mean, not to compare the two, but I immediately compared the two. And I could kind of see where they kind of exist almost in the same space to some degree, at least for this book. But I will say this: as much as I like the book, I like the art. It doesn't go deep enough for me to some degree. Like it just kind of hovers on a lot of things.
It's funny that you said that, because I was looking up the main criticisms of this, and so let's start at the beginning. So it was Disney was going to make a comic book imprint called Touchmark, and they pretty much, I mean, they should have just called it Postentious Imprints, because it was going to be Peter Milligan's Enigma, which is another. I mean, if you like this, that's another one. That's even more out there. He's the tricorn hat, like a marquee kind of mystery superhero. And then another one, I don't think, Paul Johnson's Mercy. I don't know if that one ever came out, but this imprint fell apart before it even started. And then Karen Berger said, "Look, I'm starting up Vertigo." So this is one of the very first Vertigo titles. And Vertigo, oh my God, I got everything Vertigo, or at least tried to get everything Vertigo. Every once in a while, I'll notice something that I didn't get, and I'll back it. Yeah, and I'll back it. That's not Kickstarter. I'll get it immediately. So this was supposed to be like, I think, a series, because there's a lot of lore and there's a lot of world building, and it's only 3 issues. Yeah. I could only imagine it didn't sell well. I mean, I think me and you were the only people talking about it on the planet.
I have to admit, like, the cover with those colors, it's I don't want to say it's off-putting, but it's so different that I can see people just like walking by, unless they're looking for something. Unless, like you said, Vertigo meant something specific after a while, and you just picked up, based on the imprint. But if not, then I can see people bypassing this.
Yeah, I think people did bypass it. It's so. Let's address Praetor's question. Have I ever heard of Glamour Puss by Dave Sim? Yeah, I bought Glamour Puss when it came out because this is just show you the depths of my insanity. I somewhere around 250 or so of Cerebus, I started collecting Cerebus, but I never read them because I had to read them from one on, because that's the way that I am. So it took me years before I got 1 to 250. Now I'm in the process of reading Cerebus. So I was collecting Cerebus for years without ever reading it. And then when it ended, his next title was Glamour Puss. And it's basically like a guy who has problems with women making fun of supermodels. I got number 1 and I just didn't like it. So I got number 1. I mean, Glamour Puss would be perfect for this series. It's just Dave Sim is in a world by himself. I cold called him. If you Google Dave Sim, you can get his phone number. And I called him, and we actually talked back and forth for like a week and a half. He would call me back, and we'd have another conversation for hours, but he wouldn't come on my channel. So he actually put up photographs of me as a child, which sounds sinister, but it's actually innocent. There was a comic book store and the Pulp that I ended up working at, and Larry was one of the first people to have in-store appearances, the owner of the Pulp. Dave Sim was there, and I'm 14 years old getting a Cerebus comic signed. I didn't know what it was. I didn't care about Cerebus, but free comic books signed. And so there's just a fat kid with a flannel jacket, flannel shirt getting his comic book. So Dave Sim was like, "Oh, do you know the people's names?" So I went to Larry, and me and him were trying to get everybody's names that are in those photographs. So there you go. That's my history with Dave Sim, which has nothing to do with Sebastian.
No, it's in the same vein. Yeah, I would love to do Cerebus someday.
Yeah, that's one of the comics I was thinking of talking about. So Cerebus, Sebastian. Let's imagine Oscar Wilde in a steampunk universe as the ultimate assassin. I mean, this is Grant Morrison in a nutshell. The funny thing is, I think if this was to come out now, it would get a lot of buzz.
Yeah. I mean, do you think because of the characters or
I think the subject matter? Because like we got like gender fluid characters over here, homosexuals and steampunk. Even though the steampunk, like this is I look at bands like the Damned. Like the Damned were goth before goth, so the goth aesthetic really wasn't there yet. They dressed up as vampires, they looked goth, and then you hear the music and it was like the Ramones. It's like, later on you had real, goth, but so that's what this is steampunk, but the steampunk aesthetic wasn't there yet. So they didn't have the goggles and the petticoats and everything. I got the drive-by blessing. We're going to need it after talking about this comic. Yeah, we definitely need the blessing. This first issue cover is intriguing for me. If this was a superhero comic, I don't think I would like the art. But it fits. It fits for what it is. I mean, look at this wall of text right here.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it. Like those chunks of text gave me, like environment, and it gave more information. It wasn't needless. It wasn't pointless text. So I had no problem. I know people complain about text a lot and reading. It never bothers me as long as it's good.
Yeah. Like when it comes to board games, I'll play a 6-hour board game, 7-hour board game, and love it if I like the game. I'll read wall of text if I like it. You know what I mean? But if I don't want to read it, it's a chore. First off, I got to say, look at this. I'm gonna try to be as pretentious as possible in my description. Look at this juxtaposition of dichotomies over here. We got the Coneheads movie, and then the most pretentious comic book ever made. 2 mass quantities.
Yeah, both things kind of fell into obscurity. Although the Conehead movie definitely has lived longer than Sebastian, for sure.
Yeah, just I just look at the pictures. Read who reads, but I mean, we got Grant Morrison, and love him or hate him. I know right now it's real fashionable to hate on Alan Moore. I still love Alan Moore. I think Alan Moore. I think the worst thing in the world would probably be to have Alan Moore on this channel. So, thank God he doesn't respond. I actually mailed a letter to his address. So let's see. But I think Grant Morrison, I actually saw him at a comic convention, and he was surrounded by an entourage of freaks and weirdos. And I just said to my wife, I don't want to talk to him. She said, why? I said, because it'll only be bad. So yeah. I still love Grant Moore. But Steve Yoel, this artist I'm not too familiar with, but like I said, it works in the context of this comic. And then my favorite colorist of all time, Tajana Wood. This has got to be like one of her last assignments. She's the widow of Wally Wood. And John Workman is my favorite letterer. Art Young is the editor. Who cares? But so I mean, this is just like a stellar team.
So, yeah, the artwork is really good. It does remind me of Kevin O'Neill sometimes. It's just not quite as detailed. I think it's just because he uses a technical pen, but like these really detailed architectural pieces are really well done. Yeah,
this is pleasant to look at. Again, this is like classic old school coloring. Like this is all drawn on pencils. You can see like speed lines and hash lines. Like this isn't digital art, and this is hand painted colors. This is some of the last of it before they switched over. I like that. Like I like pieces like this slice panel over here. It just shows you just amplifies like the I don't want to say horror, but like that to me, the scariest thing in the world is not a werewolf. It's not a murderer. To me, the scariest thing in the world is a mental institution. Like movies like Jacob Ladder, where he may or may not be in it. There's another one. That to me is the scariest thing of all. There's a board game where you have to escape from a mental institution, and depending upon the name of the game is called Lobotomy. And depending upon how you play the game, it could be that you're just crazy and you're beating up orderlies, or it could be that you really are the good guy escaping oppression. It depends on how you do things. It's kind of but it's a scary game.
Lobotomies are terrifying. Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with the shock therapy, and it is terrifying.
Yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to me is almost a horror movie. There's the first Saw movie. I know it was like in a bathroom, or is it? Yeah, was it Saw?
I never saw it.
I can't watch it. It just. But there's a movie that I'm specifically thinking of that's set in an old sanitarium, and it's just terrifying. We got a lot of comments here. I'll just address the comments, and we'll get. DC Miller says he's never heard of it. Yeah, Fabrizio didn't hear of it until 2 weeks ago.
Yep, no clue.
Hey, Torchbearer, how's everything going? Yep, Marcus is throwing out my links. Also, I want to put out Fabrizio, for those of you who don't know, has his own comic, Horace H. Hoover. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Horace H. Hoover is New York City's greatest space-time occult detective vacuum. It's a 5-issue miniseries. Currently, issues 1 through 3 are on my website. He's like an occult detective set in the 1920s, and he investigates paranormal, supernatural mysteries, kind of travels to other strange worlds. It's a little funny, a little creepy, a little cool. So check it out.
Yeah, I love. I was just talking with Brian and Fabrizio earlier today about how I have a fondness for those old alternate comics, because through alternate comics I met Fabrizio, I met Brian, and I even met Tonic Ball through an ad of alternate comic. So I just I'm pretty nostalgic, I guess, but I just love that comic, and I push it every chance I can get. I joke with Fabrizio. I'm like, who's the target audience? Me. It's 20s New York, Lovecraftian, occult, humorous horror. It's it's the perfect comic for me.
I do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's almost Postentious. You got to have the goggles. Zach10 says, I cast Wall of Text. Yes, look at that. Wall of Text will stop most of the dungeon dwellers from proceeding to the page so you can escape.
Noobs will not get over that wall of text.
Some person says the Kona heads looks more suspicious in silhouette. Yeah, it actually does. Oh, Torchbearer says he loves these issues. He's actually read them. Can't believe you've never seen the Kona heads. Yeah, check out Horace H. Hoover. You can get back issues on your website, right?
Yep. Yeah, 1 through 3.
1 through 3. And I highly recommend them. Highly recommend. Yeah, both Alan Moore and Grant Morrison seem like people you can only reach by telegram. I know Grant Morrison, you have to like contact like his agent, which is smart, I guess. You don't want to. But Alan Moore, I read someplace that in England, if you write somebody's name and like the town that they live in, odds are they'll get the letter. So I don't know Alan Moore's exact address, but I found out which town he lives in, and I mailed a letter. So I could see he probably just got it and like threw it away without opening it, or it's sitting in a mailbox still. Can't believe I never read it. You look like Sean Penn? Nah, not these days.
Early Sean Penn or old Sean Penn?
Yeah, that's. John, did you have your Alan Moore letter transcribed into Old English calligraphy? You're absolutely right. Yeah. What I should do is write it like a ransom note. Alan Moore will be intrigued. Yep, great logos. Yes, DC Miller's been doing my logos, and DC Miller asked me to write him a script for Bikini Girl. So I was like, I don't know, Bikini Girl being a character in Eddie is Doomed, who's a golden age, silver age superhero character that's supposed to be a bit hokey. I said, I don't have a story about her. An hour later, I was like, I got a story for her.
Yeah, he'll be perfect for that. I can't wait to see
that. Yes, people love Horace H. Hoover.
Thank you.
Horace is a great comic. Fabrizio is a nice guy.
Thank you.
And Ben Sabar sent me a really nice email yesterday that I would like to address. Give it the time that it deserves. So anyway, let's get, so like you said, this artwork, I don't know, just something about you want to scare me. Like look at, they're just walking around on hay, guys walking around with clubs. You hear all those stories that like Bedlam. I didn't realize this, but Bedlam was like an insane asylum in London, and they said that like people were born, lived, and died in Bedlam and spent their whole lives, because they were like a woman would get arrested and she was pregnant. She would give birth, and
I'm sure the guards weren't hands off either.
Yeah, I know. Geez, I didn't want to bring that up, but yes. So here's the first indication that things are not what they seem. So they use a handprint over here to open up a cell. They looking around using computer, and what's going on? Well, I'm not going to go through everything, but I'm just like zipping through the text. But they go through like Get Smart, opening up all the handprints, and then look at the Swamp Thing over here. Yep. This is just so good. And what do? Violence over here. The hand gets cut off.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the coloring is pretty simple. The guards pop to the front. Everything else kind of recedes to the back. It's only a few colors, but it's so clear. The storytelling is great. Like, it really is. It's really well done for the story. Yeah.
Look at these. We got Lord Lavender over here. I mean, it's I'm just going to turn off these display bubbles so we can see each other. It's too small. There we go. So, Lord Lavender, we got Queen Victoria,
Yeah, another technology thing that pops up. I'm like, oh, okay. So now we know they have scanners and like displays.
Yep. We got this I like too. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels, but like this panel is outside. I love stuff like that. If I could promote myself, I sent the script to Luke Stone. Of course, now I can't find it. Or I want to utilize this where there's action behind the panels to So I'm hoping I explain it well. And then somebody cast Wall of Text again. Simple. I say simple, but I'm not an artist. Is this like difficult to draw?
It's tedious to draw. I mean, the perspective isn't difficult or anything like that, but it is tedious. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I mean, he uses looks like a technical pen, so it's a lot easier. But yeah, people today would use a 3D model and trace it. Nobody, outside of some crazy people, would draw that.
Yeah. We got these Victorian maids, the cleaning. I mean, there
are times where I see a little Mignola Gotham by Gaslight in some of the faces and some of the characters.
So he's coming home. Soames. Just the names crack me up. They purposely use. I'm trying to look for it, but they purposely use like highfalutin words. Like I know Sebastian O gets like a woman who accompanies him around as his assistant, and rather than saying assistant or biographer, he says anamanusis and anamanusis.
Yeah.
I had to look it up, and it's like an old word for person who biographer, and I'm like, that sounds like such a cool word. So they're all dressing up. He's covered in whatever from the asylum. They're cleaning him up, and here we got, I guess, a helicopter. Instead of they got the whole area under surveillance. They do have like early CTV cameras, surveillance cameras. You see this? The carriages are like, they look like a horse-drawn, but they're motor cars.
Yeah.
And yet the kids still look like vagabonds, and there's barrels. So it's like, would the world have evolved like this? I don't know. Maybe if like technology all of a sudden had like a burst, like so the clothes didn't change, but it's the world of Potentia.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that. It's like civilizations only evolve in the direction of their values. So whatever the values are at any given time, if it is, a priority of aesthetics and a particular type of architectural style, like it absolutely could evolve like this. If it's, cheap materials, they're going to get, apartment buildings of drywall and drop ceilings kind of thing.
I mean, this is set like 1867. They tell you the exact year, but I forget the exact year. So it is like Victorian England, just the next universe over or something like that, where technology increased quicker than culture could advance. Like over here, visit the Magic Lantern at London Science Museum. More real than real life. The sensation of the age. So, they got movie theaters, they got motor cars, they got helicopters, hand scanners, and things like that. And so, if anybody wants to read this, Sebastian O is a rotten person. He's a spoiled brat sociopath who nothing's his fault, and he does whatever he wants. He's a pervert, he's a deviant, he's a layabout, and he's an assassin. He's not a hero. This could only work. Yeah, there's nothing likable about the main character, which is really bizarre because the older I get, the more I need a likable character. Like here he is, he's got his maid chicks, he's just standing.
Like if Sherlock Holmes was evil or something.
Yeah, pretty much. The only thing I don't buy about this comic is he's such a layabout that, like, in order to be this good of an assassin, like, he would be constantly working out, constantly worrying about what he eats. But that's, I guess, the conceit of this comic is that he is just like naturally is better than everybody else. So like, oh yeah, the police are coming in. As you wish, gentlemen. Search the house. So the police are coming in to get him. He broke out of the asylum. He cut a guard's hand off. Used the guard's hand to escape, and now he's just sitting home, like he's smoking, taking his time, and he's not even worried about the police. Why? I love this. The whole house is clockwork, and the rooms are just moving about. to confuse the police officer. So they go into a room, the room rotates, they go over here, this room rotates, they go. So he's just continuing with his bathing ritual, not worried about the cops. And what does it do? It leads them all down to the steps. Of course, the steps go down, and this room is upside down. It's he, like you said, he's super genius. How many times have we seen this bloody room? And again, they have revolvers. So it's weird how technology improves in some areas, but it's not.
Yeah.
The building
feel like if this was Alan Moore, we would have gotten a lot of more like environmental filler to give us those answers, as opposed to us sort of inferring, oh, look, an image. I guess there's clockwork houses. I mean, they mentioned that, but like, do all houses have that? Is that like a normal thing?
Well, I don't think it's a normal thing because the cops are surprised.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, the cops are like, how many times have we seen this room? Like, it's just, he's so rich. He's just like detestable. You know what I mean? Like, I try not to be, you don't want to be jealous of rich people, but you'd like to think, okay, that guy earned his money in a legal way. He's making widgets or building cars or something like that. But this guy kills people and then uses the money to lord over he's just not a good. Why do I like this? He doesn't even tie his own boots. He's just, and now he is. Look at this. He's just foppish to the point. I was playing again. Every video I talk about my role playing game, Villains Vigilant. I mean, it's not my role playing game. I didn't design it, but I've been playing this game to the point where I made up like a foppish character called the Dandy Lion, and he was like a werewolf lion guy. Oscar Wilde.
That's great.
So he was like a were-lion, and the guards, the walls are compressing, he's just, but he doesn't kill them all. I love this. He just pulls out the revolver. Like he has the butler bring out the revolver on a silver tray. And then what'd he do? Kills the cop.
I mean, just ruthless.
Yeah.
Sociopath. Like,
yeah, he just, and then the maids are like, bravo. He goes, bravo, splendid shot, sir. You're too kind, Soames. Now, I must really fly. Here's another Brother Power the Geek by Rachel Pollack and Michael Allred. This is like one of the first times I noticed Michael Allred's work. But this is, for those of you who know Brother Power the Geek, this is just like a deep cut from DC Comics. And Rachel Pollack had a short, pretentious career in DC. Like she did all of the, she took over for Swamp Thing for Doom Patrol after I want to say after Grant Morrison, and she out weirded Grant Morrison, and if I correct me if I'm wrong, but Rachel Pollack, it was like transgender back when you didn't talk about it.
Huh.
Yeah. So if I'm thinking about the right person, and introduced a transgender character in Doom Patrol back in like 1994, and Doom Patrol was so out there that people just accepted it. There was no outrage, but they were characters. You know what I mean? They were interesting characters, and that was just one of the many quirks and foibles of the character. It wasn't the entire identity. It was just like, oh, transgender. What else you got? No, that's it. No. And if you remember, Sandman had one too, Foxglove from the Dollhouse story.
Yeah, even the characters in this book that are, we'll say, different. It's not. They're not trying to tell you anything. They're not trying to make you like them. They just exist in the world logically.
Far from it. They're trying to make you not like them.
Yeah.
There's nothing like even this butler. It's just like, great shot. You just murdered a Bobby on his.
Yeah.
You killed your way out of the asylum, and then the police doing their duty, and you played cat and mouse with them and killed them. Bravo, sir.
You don't want to live in this world.
No. And I love this. He's basically like going down into his bat cave now. Big old TVs, electric lights. I mean, even electric light. I don't know. Is there electric lights in Victorian England? I don't know. Maybe in the rarities.
I think it would have to be early 1900s.
Kid Eternity. This was another.
I don't know.
This was Grant Morrison taking over for that old Fawcett comic. But I do love this. I love the cityscapes, the building. You know, it looks like real England, even though I've never been to real England, especially in Victorian England. But it looks real enough. I'd buy that. There's nothing fancy or fantastic about it.
It is really tedious to draw that, but I appreciate it when people do it. It's really well done.
Let me take a sip of coffee. I have a message from Lord Theo Lavender for the Roaring Boys. You know, and you go in there, and it's just this guy's just a creep. You know, just beats the kid up. He takes the messages. You know, he's eating a live bird. There is nobody likable in this comic whatsoever.
It's funny because as soon as they mention the Roaring Boys, before we actually see them, it was really descriptive to me. Like I'm like, okay, it's Clockwork Orangey kind of, you know, rough and tumble gang or whatever. I'm like, they're exactly what the name it like evokes.
The skeleton glove pointed finger. You know, I came to deliver a message. And then what does it say? All out mayhem next month when Sebastian grapples with Lord Theo's bizarre assassins, the Roaring Boys, whom we just glimpsed at the end of this episode. Can Sebastian rely on help from the debauched characters he calls friends? Can he remain immaculately dressed, groomed, and coiffed during a madcap chase across London? Find out next issue. That is like his thing. Is like he's perfectly dressed, his hair, you know, that's what concerns him. Human life means nothing to this guy.
The thing that kills me is like the cover of issue 2. Now we've introduced a bunch of cool technology, the Roaring Boys, all this kind of stuff, and they go with man afraid of birds on the cover.
Right, they're dirty. They you know, they're gonna poop on his clothes. You can't have that.
So funny.
Oh, I see. There's a lot of comments. Let's see. Hail to all you magnificent bastards and bastettes. Yep. Like and share. Thank you, Tank Ferret. I love your art too, Tank Ferret. With this comment, John's long box is an 11th dimensional construct. It is the long box of all long. Yeah, it's like the TARDIS. I wish, because I'm actually starting to get worried about filling up my room. I'm running out of room for comic books. It contains long boxes. That would be great. A TARDIS full of comics. Does your dandelion say put them up? Put them up. Yeah, that's Douglas, right? Yeah, he's a sociopath. That puts John on the same level as the Celestial from Marvel. Oh man, anything so I don't have to get up at 4 a.m. and go to work anymore. I mean, I like my job. I was just talking today about my foreman about how this is a pleasant job out of all the jobs, but I still would rather sit home and read comic books all day.
Yeah.
Long box law. Don't ever be too cool to live. So is this canceled? It was a 3-issue miniseries. I think when it was solicited from that Disney imprint, it was going to be a series, and then that series got canceled. And then I think they just tried it out on Vertigo for 3-issue series. And I can't imagine it. If anybody could look up sales records from 1993, I can't imagine this selling well.
Yeah,
I mean, you just bought it to do this. What did you pay? $2 an issue?
Yeah, $2.50.
Yeah. Savage you with an uncanny veneer of civilization. That's a pretty good description. That is a pretty darn good. My wife and I. Did you ever watch Deadwood on HBO?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember when my wife first moved in with me, we started watching Deadwood, and she didn't want to complain. She was still on her good behavior back, you know, and she was just like outraged by the language. But by like 2 or 3 episodes, she was engrossed to the point she bought the DVDs and she watched. She knows all the names of the characters that I've forgotten about, you know, and all the. But that's one of the things that Deadwood is, the veneer of civilization. How the people dress nice, they're polite, they nod their hats, and then when nobody's looking, they're feeding bodies to the goats and pigs and murdering people. You know, that's a pretty good description of this. I think throughout human history, and forgive me for talking so much, Fabrizio, I'm amped up on coffee. Up until I'm going to say like the 40s, I'll make it an arbitrary line at the 40s, that cruelty was the norm. You know, I'll say for most of human history, cruelty was the norm, and only now do we have a luxury of like, let's be empathetic. Like, do you think empathy would have given you a long life in the 1600s?
Yeah, I think humans need a civilizing force. I won't go into what I believe that force is, but you need something in society, some force to essentially civilize human beings' natural state.
I mean, we've all read Lord of the Flies. We are literally one generation away from savagery at any point, you know. Yep. And I read someplace that we are 4 days away from chaos. Like the United States only has like 4 days worth of like fresh food. Yeah. You know, so we constantly have to have this like 4 or 5 days away from like me breaking into my neighbor's house with a gun for a can of beans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's nothing as fragile as civilization. And the fact that now that we can be like, we need to be empathetic, it just shows you how good it really is. You know, if you're complaining now in America, you really are the top 1% of all people who've ever lived, because it's got to be the easiest. Even right now, the economics is kind of bad. It's still better than most of human history.
Yeah, it's from a place of luxury that people complain about that stuff, without a doubt. And they just, either they don't know any history, which is possible because most people don't really know any history at all, or they know particular points and like a particular point of view of that point in history, and that's it.
Yeah, learn 3 facts, start shouting, right? That's the typical American way of politics. Yeah. Have I ever read Baker Street by Gary Reed and Guy Davis? I want to say I do. I'm a big fan of Guy Davis. I compared your art to Guy Davis's art.
Really?
Yeah. I know Brian and you and we talked about a Guy Davis book called The Marquise.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And I discovered Guy Davis on Sandman Mystery Theater. It was Matt Wagner writing it, and Guy Davis did the art, and it was the Wesley Dodds version of Sandman in early, I'll say 90s DC, and then he went on to draw the BPRD. You know, to me, I mean, obviously it's different, but for some reason, like you and Guy Davis to me are in the same category of artists. But I think I read it. I'm gonna say no because I can't recall 100%. So err on the side of caution. Fabian Nicieta called me a he called me I had mental problems, but did he say sociopath? Because I collected too many comics. So Fabian, how many less of your comics should I buy to make you happier? Even the Celestials have to eat. Was Grant Morrison big when this came out? No. Grant Morrison wasn't the big household name, I think, until he got on JLA. You know, he was working his way up the ladder. I first heard of him on Doom Patrol and Animal Patrol, which are still phenomenal books. They gave him a side project once in a while. Then he did his own series called Aztec, and I think at the same time he did JLA, and that's what made him the Grant Morrison that we all know. I'm getting Steve Ditko. The art reminds me of Steve Ditko.
Interesting.
That's interesting. I'm the Pope. Point it out when I open up the book again. We just finished watching 1923, and its close historical people were cruel. Yeah, cruelty was a survival mechanism. You know, like the average person didn't have enough food. You know, we forget about this, but 1930, which is less than 100 years ago, the average house had a dirt floor in America. You know, they didn't have indoor plumbing. Now the homeless people are fat. I'm stepping over obese homeless people to get to work, and they're asking me for food. I'm like, dude, food is the last thing you need. What you need is a bath. I'll give you soap, but I'm not giving you food. That's why codes of honor exist. It's needed to maintain a civil society. Men know their boundaries and build communities around them. I agree. We are at the end of history, according to the progressives. I don't understand. I was going to get on a big political tear, but I guess I'll stop. Love me some Guy Davis. I only know him from BPRD. Very clean lines. Okay, so let's check this out. I forgot. It's funny because there's some stuff that subconsciously plagiarized from this book that I didn't notice until I reread this. It just stuck in my head for like 30 years. Against Nature. There's another artist that this reminds me of so much. He did Books of Magic.
Books of Magic. That's not Kent Williams.
No, not Kent Williams, but
Books of Magic.
But there was 3 or 4 series of Book Magic, and he drew one of them. He also took over Doom Patrol for a while with Grant Morrison, but I can't think of his name off. It'll pop into my head sooner or later. So here's another Grant Morrison. Oh no, this is not Grant Morrison. This is Skin Graft. It's about stealing people's tattoos. How 90s. He's going down into the sewers, and then we get this. I mean, this character is just like, you got to have a Victorian character. You got to have a Victorian story. You got to have a crazy guy in a top hat.
Yeah.
He reminds me of a Interview with the Vampire, the not Antonio Banderas, the other character who, he walked up the wall when he was the first vampire that Tom Cruise met other than
a long time. I don't remember. I mean, he's definitely Mad. He's literally the Mad Hatter.
Yeah. With the birds. And he scared him so bad that he jumped into the sewer water. So you can only imagine how furious he is. They're really making up for the wall of text in the last issues.
Yeah.
This is like nothing. We're up to page 5. He pulls him under I believe you dropped your cigarette lighter, and now he rakes him across the face with a cigarette lighter. He's just, underestimate him at your peril. This is the last one. This is actually one of my first exposures to J.M. DeMatteis outside of the Justice League. This is like, he's been on my channel twice now. He's a writer that I really like. Like, if you only know him from the Bwahaha Justice League, you don't know him. He's so different.
That's all I know him from.
So here we go.
Yeah.
Just look at this. This was the page that I just wanted to talk. So here he beats up this guy, and he's like, here we are in the sewers. There's absolutely no need for that kind of gutter professor. So he yells at him for cursing, because manners counts when you're Sebastian. My clothes are utterly ruined. I'm covered in items which good taste forbids me to identify, and I have your pistol. I've confessed I'm piqued, and I do hope you can give me a good reason not to send you directly to the cemetery. You're a gentleman, sir. So now this guy is talking. You're a gentleman, sir. You won't shoot a poor bloke off the streets now, will you? Perhaps not. Boom. But I detest the poor.
Yeah, if there was any question up until this point, because the guy's a cop, but this, like, completely defenseless, pleading man, right in the head.
Yeah, well, he did the worst thing in the world. He cursed in front of him, and he got his clothes dirty. So, he comes crawling out of the water. What are you gaping at, you doozy trollop? For heaven's sakes, haven't you seen a gentleman before? Let's see. There's a lot of comments in here. What do we got? Brad Pitt? Is that so? So you saying I look like Brad Pitt, or Fabrizio looks like Brad Pitt? Neither one of us looks like Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
We'll accept it. Brian used to like Vince Locke's Dead World, and I got Vince Locke Dead World. That's another comic I forgot about. That would be perfect for this series. Had to have a high in-group preference back then. Glad things are not that desperate. Yeah. Like I said, it was a survival mechanism. Us versus them, tribes. We needed it to live, back then. Now we can afford not to have it. So it's almost like do you know what a potlatch is?
Yeah.
Potlatch is an excessive burning of your wealth to show how wealthy you are. Like, oh, look, I'm going to sacrifice 2 cows to Zeus. Well, I'm going to sacrifice 10 cows to Zeus. It's worthless. It's just a display of wealth. Today, I think like progressivism is just a potlatch. Look, we're going to import thousands of people, displace my culture. They don't share our values. Crime is going up, but I'm a good person.
Yeah, in lieu of actual values and morals.
Yeah. Yep. Are you thinking of Mark Barkingham on books? No, not book. It's going to drive me nuts, and I know I'm going to think of his name like 10 seconds after He actually blocked me on Twitter when I invited him on my channel. That narrows it down to a bunch of people. Love to admit to this. Are you still thinking of the artist? Also, Paul Smith. This reminds you of Paul Smith? Yeah, I could. You know what? I could see Paul Smith in this panel. I could see Paul Smith remarkably, like, he uses the least amount of lines possible.
Yeah.
I could that. Yeah, I remember Paul Smith. He took over John Byrne, and then it went back to Cockrum, and then Paul Smith took over the X-Men. Yep. Brother Power the Geek over here. And this is, like you said, hand drawn. There's no computer modeling in this. This is yeah. I like this comment. I'm enjoying this video as much for the ads that I've never seen as much as the book itself. Yeah, well, this is a Vertigo advertising itself. You know what I mean? So maybe if you got regular DC Comics, you probably didn't see these ads. You know, when you bought Justice League, you didn't care about the last one or Skin Graft, you know what I mean? But if you were Vertigo, and Vertigo was wildly successful in like the comic, like this is full on. Does anybody remember alternate music? You know, you watch 120 minutes alternate music, and you know, and then you picked up your Vertigo books, and you know, this was just. And then we all hung out at what's that store in the mall that you know, Hot Topic. Or Spencer's Gifts, you know.
Spencer's, yeah.
Yeah, my buddy's now wife, he met her. She worked. There's a store right by me now called Utopia, and Utopia was like a record store, a tattoo parlor, clothes shop. It was just like the cool store, you know. And there's 2 locations, so you can get all like your tobacco and bong needs and your record. And she would just laugh because she's like, "Oh, we got an Instapunk today." And I was like, "Whoa, what's an Instapunk?" She goes, "A kid would come in with their mom, like all preppy looking, and be like, I'm into punk now." And they would get like the Dead Kennedys, they would get like the top 10 albums, get a tattoo, and then buy a whole new wardrobe. She was like,
awesome.
Instapunk, yeah. So, but again, this is all hand drawn. This is no, this is weird that there's actual horses on this carriage. Like this would this bore you drawing all these bricks? Or
yeah, totally. Yeah, in fact, you would never draw all those bricks. You would leave some empty, and you would dot in the bricks. The fact that he draws every single brick, artistically speaking, it's just something you do not do. Not because it's tedious, because visually, your eye, like, it doesn't look right.
Yeah, I saw you drawing on one of your draw streams a room made out of books, and you didn't draw every spine on every book. You put it like suggestions of books,
yeah,
and it gave the hint of lighting and shadows.
That's exactly what it is. What's called a lost line is when you essentially just break up the line, because the idea is that it's light, it's shadow, or it's even atmospheric perspective, which is just how far away something is. So the approach, I have to look at this person's art, some other stuff they've done.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this art. This is the only thing I could think of his name. I can't think of any other works that he did. And I also appreciate that we both wore black shirts. That wasn't coordinated.
We need turtlenecks. Yes,
turtlenecks and berets and long stems. I got to get little round glasses. Yeah. Now that I'm looking at it, I do think if he did what you did with those books, I think it would be more pleasant on the eyes.
Yeah, your eyes need some place to breathe.
Like I don't really want to look at this. Like, this is fine, but these I kind of glance at and move quick. And this wall of text, he casts wall of text again. And this is, they go inside this Victorian estate, and it's just a mechanical garden. You know, the trees got screws that go up, and you know, was it Game of Thrones where they had like all the machines coming up? Yeah, at the beginning of Game of Thrones. Yeah. So this is again 93. Yeah, this was 1993. 1993.
Cool idea.
They had some cool ads in the day. Although I would like to point out that as far as I know, Jack Kirby did it first in in Fantastic 453, the introduction of the Black Panther. they fought the Black Panther in a mechanical clockwork forest.
Really?
It was the technological jungle, they called it.
Can't beat Jack.
Yeah, like I said, everything. I used to go to Utopia in Hicksville to buy glow sticks for the weekend rave. There you go. Yeah. So I wonder if you ever met Debbie, the blonde girl who worked at the record counter.
Hicksville. I grew up 30 minutes from Hicksville.
Oh, really? I always thought you were a Pennsylvania guy your whole life. Really?
Yeah, no, Pennsylvania. Yeah, but in the middle of
Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah, in the middle of PA.
Not Peter. Gary. No. It'll drive me nuts until I think of his name. But here we go. We got this like obese guy with his little boy. Fill in the blanks, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying it out loud. And it's supposed to be like this is a famous author. It's almost like a mix between the guy who wrote The Sheltering Sky. I can't think of his name. Paul Bowles and Edgar, not Edgar Rice Burroughs, William S. Burroughs. These with like some Marlon Brando thrown in. So
I could, yeah.
This is like Dr. Moreau, Marlon Brando. And it's like I said, everybody's detestable. Everybody's detestable. And I love this. He has to go behind a privacy screen to change. They got this painting that is made famous in that Losing My Religion. It's just, again, everybody's just horrible. Because if I remember, yes, this guy's like allergic to pollen. So he just cleared out everything and replaced it with mechanics because, he's sensitive.
I missed that.
He's so, he doesn't want the insects and the bugs. I want all of that outside grassy feeling without all of that outside grassy feeling,
So years ago, this was like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, I did, whitehouse.gov, you could do petitions. And I remember one summer, we were getting a bunch of bugs in our house and it was hot out. And I petitioned the government to pave all of nature and just air condition it. So I wrote this big long thing. I think I got 4 or 5 signatures. So I do sympathize with this guy.
It's funny because we had to trim limbs on my wife was like, we got to get these limbs off the house. They're going over the house. And I was like, no, they're fine. And then I was like, oh my God, you don't realize because they're 40 feet in the air. So I was like, yeah, we had this company come and trim these limbs down. And once they were on the ground, they were tremendous. So I'm like, this is while I had a broken neck. So I'm getting my chainsaw out and I'm cutting and bringing everything down. And I couldn't carry these logs. That's how big they were. You can only imagine. So long story short, I got all this firewood in the backyard. And I'm like, yeah, honey, we'll sit. I want to build a fire pit. We'll sit out there. My wife's like, there's bugs. I'm like, so we move out to the country, and, so I guess I'll be sitting out there in the back. I'll take out my phone and I'll live stream from the backyard with all my broken neck wood. Yeah. So this poor kid gets killed. Gets shot in the back with these like hooks from this guy with the bag on his face. This like voodoo looking guy shows up. Bungle flowers and the highway. Like he just talks like a madman. Like this I always appreciated. I don't know if people can see this, but like his word balloons have like a color tint, meaning that he speaks differently. Like everybody knows the Vision has like the yellow boxes. Do they still do that with the Vision? Anybody get any modern Avengers comics?
I really like that. Like sometimes people can go overboard with different word balloons, but I really like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like in the Legion of Superheroes, every during the classic Keith Giffen days, there was like 30 members of the team. Each one had like a signature laser beam. Like when they were firing their beams, there was one panel where Darkseid was, and all of them were firing their laser beams, but you don't see the heroes. You just see, oh, that's Sunboy, that's Gravity, that's Starboy, that's Polar Boy, So I love when they do that little extra touch. George Perez would do stuff like that. Starfire had her own. Well, we talk about word balloons, but the Vision had his own word balloon.
Yeah.
There's other characters that have, whenever they show up, like Machine Man had his own word balloon for a while anyway. So I love this. The hooks are coming after this fat guy. Just immediately gives up. He can't fight, and now classic Ivanhoe fight on the stairwell. Sword fight. Running up the stairs. He's hiding. He would rather just drink a spot of tea on the sofa, but he's also James Bond at the same time. The Victorian interest in the exotic and eccentric, even if it's mostly a scam. Yeah, I like I said, my roommate, I'm not going to say his name at the time in case he's listening, but he knows what I'm talking about. It was like pretentious art guy. Oh yeah, this photographer and this and blah blah blah. And then he gets drunk. He's like, yeah, I get the chicks to come over to the house and take their clothes off. And, you scratch away a pretentious artsy fartsy guy. Underneath, you get a pervert. Like
no doubt.
David Dubensky. He's right now. He's like a famous photographer. He does nude. And somebody asked him, they said, how come all the 90% of all photographers with nude models are men? And he goes, you seriously asking that question? Like,
so I went to school for fine art, and I'm like, oh, I get to draw nude models all day. This is going to be fun, right? Because I had seen other drawings of like some really attractive women. So day one, all right, I'm like, this is going to be great. Big fat guy in a robe takes off his robe, hands on the wall, like butt towards us, and I'm like, this is not what I had.
You throw the black hole of Calcutta over here. I remember that my roommate, he's like, John, we're getting a nude model tomorrow in class. I'm like, oh, that's great. He goes, no, it's the girl from the library that you like. I'm like, I gotta crash your class. I was so mad I never got to see. But that was it. It wasn't like, oh cool, we're learning techniques. It was John, the hot girl from the library that you like.
I mean,
here we go. The fat guy's dying and you don't care. And Sebastian doesn't care either. It's just like, how do I escape? Oh yeah, he hits a remote control button and the garden itself attacks. It turns into like a death machine. I love this line of dialogue. I just got distracted by this. So he's given this long death talk, a confession before dying. He's like, look, can you hear all the trees, the forest, they're chiming. Christ, is that you? As he's dying, he goes, I'm afraid not, Abe. Even the kindest heart among us would be forced to admit that your chances of encountering Christ at this late stage are rather remote. But I want you to hear my confession, because it would take days to catalog your sin, Abe. I simply don't have the time. It's far more important for me to find out what Theo is up to. You can't even comfort your one friend as he's dying, who just saved your life. Who's basically like, I'm going to hell. Can you help me out here? It's boring. The magic lantern, and he dies. And now the cops showing up again. And now we got this like gender fluid woman. But again, it just fits this depraved world, She's not just killing animals for the sake of killing them. You don't eat hawks. She's just killing hawks. And here we got, what is it? Oh, Piranha Press. This was another small, DC had a couple of small imprints. There was Helix Comics, which got folded into a Vertigo. Helix Comics was like a Transmetropolitan was a Helix comic that later became Vertigo. Believe it or not, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was never Vertigo. It became Vertigo after Alan Moore left, even though people Mandela affected as a Vertigo comic. And then there was Piranha Press, and I think Piranha Press was supposed to be like instead of going to comic stores, Piranha Press I think was supposed to go to bookstores. And I don't think it worked. So right over here, this is it. Oh, George. So the woman's name is George. Where's that stupid dog? I believe this is yours, George. Who's the charming little blonde? She's my I know I'm going to say this word wrong. She's my Ensis. I'm sure that is only one of the number of Latin words that might be describe her duties, And then he collapses. Same old Sebastian. Fresh air does this to him every time. So, we got ourselves one of those mannish women over here. Trains, When did trains? I guess in England, trains showed up earlier, especially in the London area. But here we go. Now the next issue. Next month, our hero recovers from his fainting spell just in time to finally confront Lord Theo in a dramatic struggle atop a speeding locomotive. The horrible truth about Theo's mad scheme may just disrupt Sebastian's languid existence. Doesn't matter if people are going to die. It's going to disrupt his languid existence.
It is funny. I'm loath to make this comparison, but I'm curious what you think. So, like some of the language, some of the humor. I mean, does this remind you of Horace at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. I wrote one paragraph or one word balloon for Horace H. Hoover, and it was so fun. It was so fun. I want to write more like that. It just. But the thing about Horace though is he's a genuinely good person.
Yeah.
To the point where it is issue 2 of Horace H. He encounters a genuinely bad person.
3.
And,
3.
Yeah, it's issue 3 to the point where it's scary to see this naive. Is it fair to say naive, kind? Yeah. Looks at the best. Like I genuinely like Horace H. Hoover, and he's remarkably expressive, given that he has this unique helmet. His body language and the acting that you put him through and the way he speaks, he's just such a likable character. So that when he started reprimanding that one character, it got scary. I know. So yes, it reminds me of Horace H. Hoover, but Horace H. Hoover is a generally positive comic. Whereas this is just like all you do is just like put your tongue in your cheek and just like say like, this is like a bad dinner that, or guilty. This is probably a definition of a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I can see that. For people that like, I don't know, Dickens or like just people that like language, reading this stuff, like if the language was more modern, it's not the same book.
No.
It's not nearly as fun.
Yeah, I said a million times that I don't like the term guilty pleasure. Like if you like something, you like it. Like, I collect Femforce. It's a comic book about cheesecake superhero girls. You know what I mean? But it's not, there's no nudity or anything. It's cheesecakey. But this is a guilty pleasure because it's horrible. Like the characters are bad. Everybody's bad. The hero is the worst person in the book. I shouldn't like it, but it's well crafted.
Yeah.
It's unique. There's no other comics like it. And really, the only other steampunk comic that I could think of is a Luther Arkwright. Came out like a year or two before this.
Oh wow! There's a few steampunk comics that I know, but they are much. I mean, 20 years later, and they are like hardcore steampunk, like. Steampunk by Chris Bacalo and I don't know, some other ones, but it's like stereotypical steampunk.
Yeah, I'm looking through the comments I got. So, my word, they're thoroughly detestable. Yes, everybody is the worst. Like, put up paved parking lot, paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Yeah, get rid of those damn mosquitoes. New Horace H. Hoover. Yeah, I please check it out. It's such a good comic. So, Victorian interest in the exotic and the essential. Oh yeah, okay, we saw that already. Have to don't tell people that us deviants like to be incognito. Oh, okay, so he's an art guy. Beware the kindly ones. All right, so this is the last one. $1.95. Look at this. This was a prestige, expensive comic. $1.95. Suggested for mature readers. Was it talking to oneself? I have often thought the best way to be sure of intelligence and witty conversation. Oh, so an Oscar, like a fake Oscar Wilde quote. Talking to oneself, as I often thought, is the best way to have a secure, intelligent conversation. So here we have the queen is dead. The last one. This is like a very existential angst comic about like the last of his race. I think he's like the last of like a skin changing race to exist on the planet, and it's a lot of like, why am I here? Yeah, J.M. DeMatteis is always like in search of like the higher world, or like very filled with longing is the way I describe his work. So this is such Doctor Who. If anybody remembers the Doctor Who back when it was good, where they had the I forget what they were called, but the Bryan Street Irregulars, the lizard woman and her girlfriend and the Santaran. This is just like that. This is, she's this investigator who may or may not be, but they are lovers. She dresses like a man because she wishes she was a man, kind of thing. But she wishes she was a man, but she knows she's a woman, kind of thing. It's an interesting character, and she's horrible. And pretentious, and that's why Sebastian and her are friends. It's the only person that he's friends with that he doesn't kill, kind of. And then we have backstory, the history, why he ended up in the asylum. And I'm glossing things over because I don't. If you're interested in this, it like I said, it's a good guilty pleasure. Now I'm starting to realize maybe there is value in that term. I always said if you like something, just admit it. But I'm surprised this hasn't shown up in Horace H. Hoover. A big diving bell.
It's sketched out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Will I ever get to it? It's one of those things. But I have a really funny scene in my head about it. But we'll see. Oh,
Oscar's here. How you doing, Oscar? Oscar is my colorist, and he's also the artist on Eddie is Doomed. Meet Tonic Ball and Eddie. Meet Tonic Ball and Oscar had like a good talk on Friday. Things are moving at Longbox Comics.
You have a ton of projects in the works.
Moving a little too fast, actually. I'm getting a little like, ooh.
That's awesome.
It's hard to have stakes with no good characters. These are excellent characters. I mean, Darth Vader is a bad guy, but he's an excellent character. Like these are well thought out, excellent characters. But this is a perfect example of I don't need no representation. I don't need to see myself. If you see yourself in any of these characters, you're not invited to my house for game night.
So I think I'm trying to figure out what keeps us turning the page. Like, we don't like the main character. We're not sympathetic to anything. And I think we quote unquote root for the main character just because we want to see what happens next. Not because we care about his well-being, but literally he's going to get us to the next plot or scene. And that's the only reason.
Right. Well, it's a well-crafted story. It's a good story. But if this was an ongoing series, I think it would exhaust me. Knowing that it was 3 issues and maybe I know I watched Breaking Bad because I wanted to see him get caught. I was, he was such a detestable victim of his own arrogance. He for those of you who don't know Breaking Bad, he had an out in the very first episode, but his own arrogance and pride wouldn't let him take it. And everything else, so everything is his fault. And I was watching, like, is he going to get his comeuppance? Is he going to get his comeuppance? Like, but it was a well-written show that I was like fascinated by. Okay, he gets out of that. Oh man, I thought he was going to get caught, kind of thing. I don't know. I fully, if this was an ongoing series, I think I would have dropped it because I can only take so much of this, like, evil is really the only way to describe it.
I think it would have to be at least a glimmer that he's not 100% evil. Like, I don't know, he has a relative and he shows like some vague concern, just something.
Like he goes home and he cares for his mom.
Something.
But no, that doesn't. And look at this, Ozzy Osbourne. Is this a well-placed ad? Like, do you think Ozzy Osbourne people are buying Sebastian?
Wow.
This should have been like, I don't know, like, who would have been a better music act to put there? I'm trying to think.
Man, I like
Tom Waits or something.
93. What Tom Waits? Sure, it'd have to be some, like, I don't know,
Mazzy Star,
Myths or something. I don't know.
So now she's talking to the police, and the police are kind of freaked out. She's dressed like a man kind of thing, but she's of high standing. And they lie to the police. Sebastiano's not here. And now Lord Theo Lavender. I mean, everybody. What is this? Oh, Barks Root Beer. All I can think of is they must have been running out of money because these ads are more normal ads now. The ads in these two comics, except for that Coneheads, was all other Vertigo titles. Now the ads are like, all right, the comic's not selling. Throw some root beer ads.
Yeah.
Some Ozzy Osbourne. We got to make up for our losses over here.
I would love to know how much ad space cost in comics back in the day. I have no like concept of that.
Yeah. That is fascinating. As I choke on my beard here. So here we got the he's on the train, Victorian England train, I love this. He's just sitting here talking, murders the guy when they go through the tunnel, blood all over the place, and there's Sebastian. Isn't it charming to have one's cherished assumptions confirmed so vividly? Blood quite clearly is thicker than water. Well, so he's toying with him. He already killed, his traveling companion, and now he's just toying with him. Again, so they're having like this little battle of wits. Basically, pulls out an iPad over here. It's funny. Remember when we saw like the iPads on Star Trek? The Yeoman Rand would come by and Kirk would sign something. That's so futuristic. And now it's like, I go to a restaurant and the kid next to me is annoying me because he's got an iPad playing like Baby Shark at top volume while I'm trying to eat my wonton noodles. True story. The knife pulls out and violence ensues. I love that. This is like the one time in the whole book that Sebastian is taken by surprise. Like he's so smug. He's like toying with them, telling it, and then he just pulls out a knife and attacks him. And he's out of sorts.
Yeah, I really thought at this point that this guy, this Lavender dude, was going to be like his Moriarty, but we learned that that's not the case very quickly.
It's hard to have stakes with no good characters. I think it's to see how he's going. Yeah, it's how to get away with it. Yeah, if you can't like their morals, you sometimes admire their skill. I'm trying to think. Is there any movies that you just loved, even though, like Goodfellas, they're all pieces of crap, but I love that movie.
It's one of the greatest movies of all time.
Right,
like
but
Heat is another great example.
Make your diving bell look like the Empire's probe that lands on Hoth. Greetings. Bauhaus, yeah, that would be a good band. But Bauhaus, were they even around in 93? I think they were over. Is this the first post-mentions life? Yeah, this is the first Postentious. This is the first of hopefully many Postentious. I normally need more sci-fi or magic than this. Yeah, this is not my wheelhouse, but like, again, it was like the perfect time. I was in this artsy-fartsy stage. So now, here they're fighting. They get back on the train, again, they're trying to make it like it's funny because like how do you think action in a comic? Sometimes I just think it's almost a waste because like without the moving pictures, and then sometimes like when I read John Byrne's Fantastic Four when they were fighting Terrax, and Terrax was controlling the rocks and throwing Ben Grimm, and then Ben Grimm punches Terrax and he goes through. Man, my heart would race. And then sometimes, like this fight, I'm like, okay, they're on top of a train and they're punching each other. I could care less,
Yeah, I think without a doubt, some action in comics has impact and some doesn't. Obviously, the greats, like, and this is like a little thing about art. So if you look at him punching him in the chin,
right here,
yeah. There are no speed lines for his fist, and it's just a little red thing on the chin. If that was Kirby or Buscema or Friends or something, it would be a huge white star. It would be speed lines. We just don't do that.
Too. It would be like, the punch would be beyond the face, and then like his feet would be in the air.
I feel like that is definitely it's a weak spot for most artists, me included. It's something I always try to work on.
I think they were going for like a more realistic fight. Like over here, he throws a punch and misses, and then he hits him in the stomach. That's kind of realistic. And then this, like you said, exactly. Like I get the feeling he just went like pa, like that was the sound effect, pack. You know, like it's instead of like a whammo. But you know, and then he trips him off the train. And this is a little disconnect here because the way he's off, and then he's right side up over here.
Yeah.
Like you're the artist. I'm the writer, and I'm just because I sent no secret here. I sent Marcus a script, and it's basically just like a fight for 5 pages, you know. But I thought the fight out in my head. Like this would be okay if he's falling like this. There would have to be another panel because this is his head is facing down, and then in the next panel his head is facing up, and this is causing a disconnect. Is anybody watching this getting that same?
I agree.
I choreography.
You would absolutely need one more panel to, at minimum, show a hand grasping something, and then I think that would at minimum you would need something like that. I think. Yeah. Ideally, you want a person hanging and then like motion speed line, kind of like flipping around or something.
And they're all motion speed lines. Like that's what this is to show you that the train is going by. You know. So they're not above motion speed lines.
Yeah.
You know. And then, you know, so now he's giving him the speech, you know, again, I'm not going to give away the whole plot or anything like that, but like, I am God. He goes, haven't you heard? God is dead. Boom, 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 you know, and he shoots the guy into the laundry, into the cobblestone streets. See, now this is more what you were talking about. Every line isn't really drawn, you know, and I think that's more interesting to look at than meticulously drawn lines. I do like this though, the puddle over here. You can see the red pouring into the puddle. Lord help us, he's killed Lord Lavender, you know, and now how is he going to get away from the bobbies? Stop the train. And it's almost like they gave up on the high tech now. At this point, it's like low tech. The train stops by a ripcord, you know, he's chasing off the cop stop clubs. You know, where was all that gadgetry and everything? It was just, you know, again, well, this is a horseless carriage, literally, you know. But the women are still carrying laundry baskets. You know. It's almost like technology is for the rich.
Yeah, it definitely, like I said, it feels a little superficial and just like hinted at, whereas it's not like really incorporated into the story and the environment.
So this, look at this ad over here. This is Jonah Hex Vertigo. This was awesome. He's killed 500 men. They've always stayed dead before. That is such a great title.
Love
The Unforgiven meets Night of the Living Dead. So this is Lansdale, Timothy Truman, and Larry Gant. So this is Jonah Hex fighting zombies. This is just, don't you want this comic? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, it's so good. So free. This was my introduction to Jonah Hex, believe it or not. So, and then,
wow.
Then when I went to regular Jonah Hex, I'm like, there's no zombies, there's no vampires, you know. But man, do I love Jonah Hex these days. And then we got this freak, you know. And again, like a normal punch to the bread basket, like we got about 40 people watching. Have you ever been punched right there? Oh my God. Get the wind knocked out of you?
I have, yes.
Yes, it really does hurt. So like I believe this. Like the last punch, that little pap to the chin was underwhelming. Yeah. But first off, like this guy is like coming down, and then that momentum. This punch sells it to me. You know, he runs away, he gets whipped. You know, and then he's got the whip around him drive. So what does he do? He drives away and like drags this guy by the whip. And here is Enigma. This is the other comic that came out under this line, but this one is up to 6. This was a continuing story. I think it got canceled around 9 or something like that. But this was Peter Milligan, who I first got interested in. Peter Milligan. He did the second series of Micronauts. So like I followed I follow mostly writers than artists, and this was super pretentious. Like this makes Sebastian O look like a mainstream comic. Just look at this. So now he's in this motorized carriage drag, and what is he doing? There's a guy behind him being dragged to his death, and he's checking his nails to see if there's any effluvia in his nails. And then he makes it home. So past the laudanum. The end. So I wonder, was there more? The world building is too strong for just like a 3-issue series. Oh, here we go. This is Gary Davis art right here. Guy Davis art that sort of kind of reminds me of you.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a good series. I recommend this. The Sandman Mystery Theater. Yeah, I'm looking at all of these ads. So we got Sandman Mystery Theater by Matt Wagner and Guy Davis. I just realized I gotta go. I'm
okay.
8:30. I'm on a comic book team up with RJ on his channel.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a blast. I'd like to do this more. I would like to invite Brian, and I'd like to have Brian talk about Evil Eye with me and you. That he recommended to me. So
awesome.
We'll do this. You if you want to pick the next one, I picked the first one, and chances are I probably have it because I'm a crazy person.
Yeah.
What I'll do, I know it's time to trim the beard. I'm getting beard hair in my mouth.
Right,
What does Tony Grigo says? You call this pretentious? I see no one wearing suspenders and fedoras while drinking micro beer. Well, this is postentious. It's so far beyond that. It's no longer pretentious. It is postentious. And we'll leave you at that because I got to go over at RJ's channel at the Fourth Age. So on YouTube, look up the Fourth Age and I'll be there. I have no idea what RJ and I are talking about. So see you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
and they're right on time. So, actually, I wanted to talk to you about what you're reading